Testing, testing. Oh, there we go. Now we've got some audio. All right, everybody, this is Jackie Luqman, and today is Monday, August 13th, coming to you live from Washington, D.C., a day after the much touted but ultimately completely failed alt-right white civil rights rally in Washington, D.C. I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes to hop on and share the video, invite friends, do what you need to do. Because I really want to talk about not so much the rally, but what happened or what is happening today after the rally on conservative talk radio that pretty much explains why we don't mess around with trying to reason with the alt-right, white nationalists, white supremacists, or racists. I don't care what terminology you use to describe these people now. They are the same group of people. They are of the same ilk as the Klan, the white nationalists that we have been fighting for centuries. They're the same group of white people, the same ideology that we have been fighting against forever. Please don't think that just because these people are younger, that they're more polite, that they wear khakis and polo shirts and suits and ties, that they are any less hateful in their ideology than the people who bombed a church and killed 4 little girls. Don't think they are any different from the people who lynched men, women, and children for asserting, well, just for existing. Let's just be honest. These group of people who call themselves the alt-right, in order to normalize or sanitize their message, are the same bunch of folks, same ideology as the white supremacists, as the Klan, as neo-Nazis. They are no different. So when they came into town yesterday and they tried to stage their white civil rights rally, they were met with much more resistance than they thought they were going to be met with, I suppose. But when you really look at what was done and the way it was handled, I'm really wondering if all of this wasn't a publicity stunt to bolster the narrative that's being put out there today, a day after the rally. So if you listen to conservative radio, they are spinning the failure of this white civil rights rally from yesterday as like an example of bullies on the left. On several conservative talk radio shows this morning, people were quoting this Jonathan Kessler person, the guy who I think his name is Jonathan Kessler, who organized this, who was involved with organizing the original Unite the Right rally, during which several counter-protesters were assaulted and injured, and Heather Heyer was murdered. And this was all in response to counter-protesters trying to protect a predominantly Black neighborhood that the white supremacists were trying to march into after the formal rally had ended. That's a part of that story that is so rarely told about what happened last year in Charlottesville, where Heather Heyer was murdered. Was the scene of a standoff between the counter-protesters and the Unite the Right people, in the counter-protesters trying to protect this neighborhood from these people. So these Unite the Right people who wanted to have an anniversary march, they did it in Charlottesville, and our friends, the Virginia Defenders, are formulating an analysis or a summary of that event from yesterday in Charlottesville and we're putting together one, and there will be one big report from both locations. But I wanted to talk about the narrative that's being spun on conservative radio about what happened in DC yesterday, because about 40 people showed up for this white civil rights rally. Now think about what they called it, right? They called it the rally for white civil rights, as if anyone is violating the civil rights of white people. They've been crafting this narrative of white people being aggrieved by the advocacy of Black people and gay people and people of the Muslim faith and immigrants in asserting our rights, in fighting for our rights to not be infringed upon, which is actually happening. But they're turning it around, and they're trying to claim that these marginalized group of people are bullying white people into having their rights violated because we're making it hard for them to express how they feel about certain situations, which is really, it's disingenuous. Because if you're not opposed to people standing up for their rights to not be violated, what could you have to say against that? So Black people are saying that we don't want to be assaulted and tried and executed on the street by law enforcement, not given due process in a court of law, which every American is guaranteed under the Constitution, allegedly. We're saying that we're tired of institutional racism and structural discrimination. And we're tired of our rights continually being violated in many ways in this society. And the response of these people is, well, just the fact that you're saying it is an infringement upon our civil rights. And you saying that we can't say that you don't deserve to protest against your rights being violated is in fact an infringement upon the civil rights of white people. That's the most ridiculous, ignorant, foolish thing. But that's the basis for their aggrievement. That marginalized people responding to some white people saying, well, your rights aren't being violated. And maybe if they are, if they deserve to be violated, and we think you're being mean to us because we don't agree with you, they're saying that that's a violation of their civil rights. So they crafted this whole white civil rights rally that they wanted to do yesterday at Lafayette Park across from the White House. 40 of them showed up, maybe about 40 of them showed up. Counter protesters, though, probably about 2,000 of us showed up. It was such an uneven situation that, now dig this, the very people who consider that they are superior to everyone else, and these are people who want an ethno-state, who are supportive of having a nation state that is preferential in treatment and rights and privileges to the dominant European descended culture, aka white people. They believe that white people are superior, but they were afraid of 2,000 people being held back on the back end of the park with 2 rows of police buffers, half a park, a street in between us and them. These people who believe that they are the master race, they believe that their civil rights are being infringed upon, They wanted to come out and stand up for their civil rights as white people, to decry the oppressive and dismissive message of those mean and troublemaking blacks and gays and Muslims and immigrants. But they didn't have the balls to stand up in a protected space. They were well protected and separated by Metropolitan Police, Park Police, probably Capitol Police, and some other police forces that we couldn't even identify, maybe even Secret Service police. They were well protected and separated from the 2000 counter protesters. They didn't have the balls enough to stand up and deliver their message in their little protected space in front of the White House. But see, I think that was all kind of orchestrated so they could have what they believe is evidence to bolster the narrative that's coming out today. Because see, on conservative radio and on conservative news, they're not going to show you the images of that enormous buffer zone between where the alt-right protesters were supposed to have their rally and where the counter protesters were. There was literally half an entire park separating that area where the alt-right protesters were going to be and the rest of us. People couldn't have gotten to those folks if they wanted to, and nobody wanted to. But you're not going to see that on conservative news. What you're hearing on conservative news, what you're hearing on conservative radio is that these leftist protesters bullied these nice conservative people who came out. I just saw the first monarch butterfly of the season out here in our backyard. Makes me very happy. Sorry about that. I'm so distracted, easily distracted by pretty things. But these alt-right protesters who, for all of their bravado about being right in wanting an ethno-state and believing that their white civil rights are violated, they needed to get police escorts into a metro station, into a private car, so that they could take the public transportation service to their little rally safely. Now, being a person who has been involved in protests with all kinds of different groups of people, I don't think I've ever seen Metro, the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, provide special protection for any other group of people to get on a Metro car all to themselves so that they could get to their protest that they staged separately. I've never seen that. Because see, when Black Lives Matter go out to protest, we just get there. You understand? When gay people go out to protest, they just get there. When immigrants go out to protest, they just get there. Nobody calls the police and Metro and says, hey, we're putting on a protest. Can you help us use public transportation safely and keep all of the public back so that they don't attack us? Can you provide a private transportation service for us so that we can get to our protest safely? No other group of people does that. These people did. This so-called master race did. These people who claim that their civil rights are being violated by all the non-white people who are resisting their ethnocentric white supremacist and discriminatory messages. No, these were the people who needed a greater police escort to get on the subway to get to their protest than there were people who were participating in the protest. The video is on our page. So they had a police escort on Metro where the police, and I don't know if this was Metro Police or if this was Virginia Police or the state police. I don't know. I just know that it was a police force. You go watch the video. You go watch the video and see that there were more police protecting these 40 or so people who had masks on. Oh, but they're the master race, and their civil rights are being protected. Gee, I remember all of those civil rights marches. We didn't wear masks. Our parents and grandparents didn't go out there and wear masks because we weren't afraid to stand up for what we believed in. For these people who claim that they are so right in their ideology, they sure are scared to show their faces, aren't they? Because see, they have police protection, but the police are out there surveilling us. When we were standing out at Lafayette Park doing our stream after we after the event was over, because again, these are people who came to DC saying they were protesting for white civil rights, but they were too afraid of people who were separated from them by half a park and 2 or 3 cordons of police officers. They couldn't even stick around and say what it was they came all this way to say. So they left. There was no white civil rights rally at Lafayette Park. So while we were doing our live stream after these people left under police protection again, we were videotaped and photographed, that we could see people up in the balconies of the buildings across the street from Lafayette Park taking pictures of the counter protesters who were still out. Now, maybe some of those people were legitimate journalists, but I'm not so foolish as to believe that some of those people were not members of the intelligence agencies, the misintelligence agencies, the unintelligence agencies, keeping tabs on the counter protesters who were out there. But you don't hear about any of that. You don't hear about any of these details about how much space there was between this rally point for the white supremacists and the counter protesters, about the police presence that contained the counter protesters and provided all this protection and security for the members of the alt-right that kept them safe. But what you hear in conservative media today is how these 40 or so members of the alt-right felt threatened by all of these people who came out to exercise our First Amendment rights and our constitutional rights to counter protest their message that they claimed they were too afraid to deliver. So I look at this whole white civil rights rally. Yes, it's a failure of what they intended to do on the one hand, but understanding the nature of propaganda and how these people operate, and looking at the narratives that are coming out of conservative media today about how they are continuing to demonize the left. They're continuing to demonize Black Lives Matter. I mean, every Black person who shows up at a protest now is identified as Black Lives Matter. And it's not just conservative media that does this. Mainstream, quote unquote, liberal media does this too. And it's all an effort to demonize everyone on the left and protest on the left. That's all it is. So they're demonizing protests on the left. They're demonizing Black Lives Matter. They're demonizing Antifa again. I think maybe, I don't know that I saw anyone out there who identified themselves as Antifa specifically. There were certainly people out there who were, I think the largest contingent I saw was from the Socialist Workers Organization. But the narrative out of conservative media is the left are a bunch of bullies and they are stifling the free speech of conservatives. And to the end that that is the narrative that is being propagated about this ridiculous little white civil rights rally That was really the goal of this. So they could have an example to use to lend some type of legitimacy to this claim that the left doesn't like free speech. Let's make this clear about what happened yesterday. No one stopped these people from coming out to Lafayette Park and delivering whatever message they had to deliver. Yeah, there were 10 times as many people out there opposing their message. But just because somebody is opposing your message, it doesn't mean they're stopping you from saying what you had to say. The only people who stopped these folks who were participating in this white civil rights rally were the people who participated in the white civil rights rally. They were the ones who decided that they were too afraid to say what they had to say. That's not our fault. It's not our fault that you actually don't have balls. And see, the lies that are coming out about this rally yesterday in conservative media and from the alt-right and from all the people who are sympathetic to them, these lies are the reason we have never, ever been with this whole we can work with the alt-right crowd. These people are a bunch of liars, manipulators, aside from being white supremacists, racists, misogynists, homophobes, and xenophobes. Aside from being purveyors of hatred, they're also blatant liars. And they will spin any event into a narrative that completely turns what actually happened on its head to make them look like the victims. This is what they have always done. This is the basis of the white aggrievement syndrome in this country. That the real victims in this fight against racism and fascism in this country, it's not people fighting against the agents of actual racism and fascism. It's the people who are standing up for the rights of those who want to spew their racist and fascist ideology, saying that you're violating our rights by publicly disagreeing with us. That's the whole basis of this white aggrievement BS. And that's what they're spinning in the conservative media and from alt-right sources today. These people are a bunch of whiny, lying, hateful people who will not look at any type of media manipulation and dishonesty and subversion to turn sympathy of any kind into their favor. So people on the left who are saying we need to understand these people, we need to try to reason with them, or we can work with them on some issues that they agree with us on, like getting Medicare for all passed. If you want to work with a bunch of people who would blatantly lie and manipulate a situation like this for their own propaganda to make them look like the victims when they're the ones who are purveying hatred and violence in their ideology, if you want to roll with those people, you go ahead. But like we have said all along, we know who these people are. We are under no illusions about the fact that these folks look respectable and presentable with their suits and ties and khakis and polo shirts. They're the same racists. It's the same racist ideology. It's the same white nationalist ideology. It's the same ethno-state ideology behind the KKK, behind the citizens' councils, behind lynchings, behind the destruction of Black communities in this country, behind white racist mob violence against Black people during the Red Summer of 1920, behind the destruction of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Rosewood. It's the same racist ideology behind redlining and school segregation and massive resistance. It's the same racist ideology behind mass incarceration and the school to prison pipeline and the slavery clause of the 13th Amendment that goes back to black codes and vagrancy laws and pig codes and criminalizing homelessness and unemployment for the purpose of re-enslaving a newly emancipated population of formerly enslaved people to perpetuate free labor. It's the same racist ideology that uses innocent symbols like tiki torches, the ones right behind me, to hearken back to the torch-lit marches of the SS through the streets of Germany on Kristallnacht, breaking out the windows of Jewish businesses as they marched through the campus of the University of Virginia last year, chanting, "You will not replace us and Jews will not replace us." Yeah, we laughed at the fact that they used tiki torches from Home Depot, but they understood the symbolism was exactly the same. It's the same hatred, the same ideology that loaded gays and Roma people and intellectuals who were against fascism, and teachers and scientists and Jews onto cattle cars, and watched them ride into concentration camps where some of those people's ashes polluted the skies around the smokestacks that cremated their remains. It's the same ideology. It's the same ideology that is on the rise in some European countries today that are blaming immigrants for this alleged and fictitious rise in rapes and murders when it's actually not even true, while they are simultaneously ignoring the violence being committed by the European population against the immigrant population that are fleeing the instability created by the wars and the militarism and the imperialism that's being imposed on the countries immigrants are fleeing from. It's the same hateful ideology that's being spewed from what used to be, what was supposed to be the people's house in this country, is calling for the building of a wall because they, Central American countries, aren't sending their best. They're sending rapists. They're sending drug dealers when it is our country that is raping and feeding the drug cartels in the countries these people are fleeing from, that are making their homes the instability, the unstable places that they are now. It's the same racist, willfully ignorant ideology that's spewing these false statistics about Black unemployment being the lowest it's been in decades in this country, and this president is more pro-Black than any other president before, when they're not telling you the truth about Black unemployment still being twice as high as the national average. And they're not even counting the long-term unemployed who have just dropped out of the market. They're not talking to you about the communities where unemployment among Black males in particular is damn near 50%. But they're still spewing this false narrative about GDP being 4% and the economy is doing great, but our people are dying. And they're trying to tell you that it's not happening, because it feeds into this false narrative that they're trying to spin, that's all based on this this American Eurocentric exceptionalism, that they're trying their best to not only perpetrate, but entrench in perpetuity forever through policies, not just in this country, but around the world. But in order to do that, they have to tell you, they have to tell me and you that what is actually going on in the streets in our communities, at these protests that they stage, that we are showing up more and more at to defy them, isn't really happening. They have to make them out to be the victims, and they have to make us, those of us on the left, those of us who are opposing them, they have to make us the victimizers. That's all that narrative that's coming out about this failed protest in Washington is about from conservative media. So when you hear this stuff, when you see this stuff about, protesters, the counter protesters faced off against the police, that didn't happen. It didn't happen. Yeah, people came out and we shouted and we chanted and we let our opposition to fascism and racism be heard, but those are our First Amendment rights. So nobody stopped these people from coming out and delivering their message, whatever it was, yesterday in Washington, D.C. Nobody bullied them into not speaking. Nobody, if anybody stopped them, if anything stopped them from having their say at Lafayette Park, it was the rain. But if the rain didn't stop us, I don't know how it stopped them. So maybe they're more afraid of God than they are of anything else, and perhaps they should be. Absolutely, they should be. So listen, if people want to continue to believe that we're supposed to try to reason with people like this, who would just blatantly lie about what's actually going on, about what actually happened, and if people want to continue to believe that you can reason with people who would go to these lengths to create an event that they would use as a tool of propaganda to make them and their cause out to be the victim when they're really not, you go right ahead and keep thinking you can reason with these people. We, meanwhile, will be out here to continue doing the work to not only combat their message and their messaging and their propaganda, but to also protect the people who are being impacted by those folks with the money and the power who are enacting legislation that really is affecting marginalized people's lives. Those people who control the media on the left and the right, because this isn't, please don't make this out to be a Democrat versus Republican or conservative versus liberal thing. No, this is an American problem. The narrative around racism, that it's not that bad and that it still doesn't affect people. And look, racists aren't there. They're not that many of them. They're in the White House. And they have been for a while. He's not the first one. He is just the latest face of blatant, overt white supremacy. He has just been the one who has been most welcoming to white supremacists in the open. White supremacy has been at work in this country, in our legislature, for centuries. And we are constantly doing the work to combat that. We cannot do that work by negotiating with the terrorists who are implementing the policies that uphold white supremacy. So I just wanted to take a few minutes to set the record straight about what really happened at the white civil rights rally yesterday. I don't know what's going to happen with Metro and what they are going to say about what they did in providing these people preferential treatment and extra protection. I just feel like if you about that life, if you're going to do all this to come all the way to Washington, D.C., to claim that you are standing up for white civil rights, you need to march your happy behind right down Pennsylvania Avenue like everybody else has done, without police protection and a special protected metro car to get you from the metro station at Vienna down to Foggy Bottom. Nobody else got that kind of protection. You shouldn't have gotten it. So Metro needs to answer for that. And I don't know what's going to happen for that. We'll let you know. We do have some video, and we have some more pictures that we're going to post from yesterday. But mad respect for the 2,000 or so comrades who came out yesterday in Lafayette Park in the rain, in sun, heat, rain, to make it clear that DC belongs to us. No, we don't want fascists and racists marching through the streets of our city. We expelled them 19 years ago from Lafayette Park. We expelled them yesterday, and we'll keep doing it. We cannot stress enough that this is work that will never cease. This is work that will never not need to be done, because power concedes nothing without a fight. And you can't reason with these people who believe that their grip on power is being snatched from them by a bunch of undeserving mongrels that they want to expel from what they think is their country. Not going to reason with these people. You think you can, go right ahead. The Luqmans aren't among those, and we never will be. So, share this video, y'all. Invite people to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. Invite people to like and follow us on Facebook. And stay tuned for more content. Thanks a lot. Consider becoming a patron if you like what you see and what you hear on Luqman Nation. Consider becoming a patron with monthly contributions. Or if you can't do monthly contributions, then consider supporting us every once in a while with what you can through our GoFundMe platform or through PayPal. You can find us on all three of those platforms by searching under Luqman Nation, LuqManNation. Thanks a lot. And as always, be really good to each other. Peace.